First we're gonna do do now activity. Just in like 3 sentences, answer the question. What is graffiti and who creates graffiti? Just write it down.
Oh, now? Oh.
Yeah.
What is it?
Can you repeat the question?
What is graffiti and who creates graffiti?
It's going to be such a problem.
Well, I'm gonna call on you then.
You're a boy.
Yeah.
I didn't see, yeah. Let's see.
I'll give you guys like another minute. Then we'll share our answers aloud.
You say who, wait, what is graffiti and...
What is graffiti and who creates graffiti? Normally I'd have it written down, but I don't have a...
You don't like a chalkboard?
No. Or like a PowerPoint. Almost done there, you guys? Wrap it up. Alright, you want to read what you got, Clay?
I wrote that art that is illegally done in an urban setting is considered graffiti, and that graffiti is created by gang members or cultural activists.
Pretty good answer. Anybody else? Anything different?
Mine's pretty much the same. Except I put people who create graffiti or artists.
I said spray paint art on buildings created by hoodlums.
They said that graffiti is street art and it is done by people of low moral character.
Alright, now we're just going to watch about 10 minutes of this video on a graffiti artist.
You see?
You can turn the volume. I turned it down so it's really loud.
The early 1980s, a time of prosperity and new hope for the American dream.
Now it's all coming together. Greatness lies ahead of us.
But it was poverty emerging in the streets. The need for social change was being expressed by young people making their mark on the walls of the city. Knowing more about making a mark than the graffiti artists in New York. In the midst of a complex and sophisticated society, cave drawing was making a comeback. Were they public announcements sponsored by the city, or symbols of some cult? They weren't factory printed like ads. They were drawn in chalk. Someone had stood there and drawn them on the spot. Amid the drudgery of getting to work, these strange visions were wide awake, and they made the entire city wonder, where were these drawings coming from? Vibrant East Village art scene. Keith Haring, 21 years old.
Most of it at that time was really about having fun. And we had no idea, I don't think anyone did at that time, that what we were doing was in any way going to be important or influential or going to have some effect on all of our lives or on the lives of other people in the city.
Art was breaking out of the gallery. Signs of creative energy were out on the street. And Harry, the man behind the subway drawings, was showing us that energy, popping out everywhere around us.
I just by accident noticed the first empty black panel on the subway because I was riding the subway almost every day to go to work. And I saw this empty black panel and immediately it sort of flashed in my head that it's the perfect place to draw.
But not in the New York City Police Department. Harry was arrested for criminal mischief. But nothing could stop Harry from drawing all over the city. His images started to appear everywhere. Keith Haring was born in 1958 in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. He grew up in the 60s in a middle-class American family, influenced by Walt Disney and his father, an amateur cartoonist. Harry was too young to take part in the political turbulence of the 60s, but that same spirit was to emerge later in his work.
Most of my, I suppose, political concerns and social concerns came from, my life experience. I mean, partly being being born in the 60s, or late 50s, and growing up in the 60s, and sort of being around the quote-unquote counterculture, but not being able to participate in it, but definitely being very affected by it, and being at the age at that time when I was, I think, most impressionable, and seeing things like the Vietnam War when I was 10 years old, and seeing race riots on television, and reading Life and Look magazine, things like that.
In 1978, he moved to New York City to study painting at the School of Visual Arts. New York, where what was considered vandalism started to look very much like real art. A feeling of the 60s revolution hung in the air. It seemed as though these graffiti artists wanted to make it happen again in the 80s.
What was interesting about this young group was that they had tremendous stamina, euphoria, and drive to recreate what they thought to be the best things or the most fun or the most innovative things to be done at that time. They had tremendous energy and vitality. They had a new message to give. They had a new vocabulary to sort of communicate, to broaden, to rediscover, and to elaborate on. The idea of behaving well like the older artists was not acceptable to them. They weren't interested. It wasn't fun for them.
These young artists were following in the steps of the pop artists of the 60s, who broke through the boundaries of the conventional art world. Art could no longer be restrained by the clean white walls of the art gallery. Artists like Christo began making art on a scale too vast to be contained. Works like Running Fence stretched over 24 miles of California coastline. For Haring, the impact of Running Fence reflected Christo's desire to bring people together to create public art.
I believe very strongly that 20th century art is not a single individualistic experience.
Christo involved people in the creation of his art. Andy Warhol, the most controversial artist of his time, mass-produced his art as a comment on the increased mechanization of society. He used the familiar images of popular culture to draw a greater public into his pop art revolution.
In that way, Warhol is the father to this new generation of artists who also seek a direct engagement with the public. Certainly Keith Haring, Kenny Scharf, Basquiat all attempted to make images that were accessible and generic enough that they could be accepted by every man without any critical intervention. In some ways, they bypass the art world establishment. They attack the elitism that had dominated art for the last several decades by going directly to the people with images that the pupil could understand immediately.
Birth, death, love, war. These simple, almost primitive images appeal to a wide range of people.
The variety of people that were seeing the work brought with it a variety of responses and a variety of different ideas about what the work was. And so it sort of became the perfect environment or laboratory to work out all these ideas that I was discovering.
Why would the dog be barking at the man at the Times Square station and worshipped as an idol at 14th Street? If there was a secret behind the subway drawings, it was semiotics, the theory of signs. At the School of Visual Arts, Harry studied semiotic theory and discovered that images can function like words. He uses images to create a language, like words in a sentence. The meaning of each symbol varies depending on how it is combined with other symbols.
The drawings had become almost a vocabulary. There were flying saucers, there were pyramids, things like this glowing rod that sort of was an archetypal weapon. I mean, it was anything from the sword and the stone to Darth Vader's, glowing rod. It sort of had this timeless, universal kind of thing where I was trying to, I think, use things that cut through all of culture and all of history. Once I started to realize that exactly how I was communicating, I started to be much more aware of what I was communicating and really trying to sort of be more in touch with what exactly was going back and forth, and not so much just putting out abstract thoughts, but really trying to guide people to see particular things and starting to deal with more social concerns.
Harry's work was simple and bold, instantly.
Don't take too much time with the video. I saw that some of you were taking notes. Did you learn anything new from the video?
Kind of.
What'd you write down? Since you're the only one that wrote.
Let's see. As far as he started graffiti only to have fun. He really wasn't trying to influence anybody. And I guess over the years he started taking, current events and started applying that to his artwork.
Did the video change anyone's perception of graffiti at all? You pretty much feel the same way about it still?
I think it was interesting that they related back to Andy Warhol and the other pop artists of the 1960s.
Alright, next we're going to do popcorn reading of the article Art or Vandalism, and Andre can start.
Earlier this year, Mr. Williams was sentenced to 180 days in a county jail as a result of probation violation from a graffiti incident, just days after the opening of a major museum exhibit dedicated to street art that features his work. Unable to post his $320,000 bail, Mr. Williams sat in jail for 4 days before the sentencing. Law enforcement officials around the country are prosecuting graffiti artists with harsher sentences than ever, pushing for felony charges, real prison time, and restitution payments as they seek to wipe graffiti from the streets. At the same time, the art world and corporations are embracing the graffiti form like never before. You can make a case that graffiti and street art is the most influential art movement since the great innovations of the 60s, says Jeffrey Deitch, director of the LA Museum, known as MoCA. Before this show, no American museum had ever done an ambitious historical exhibition. Calais, your turn to read.
Law enforcement sees this as a historic moment as well. This is really the first time in the history of law enforcement that we're making significant gains in identifying who the graffiti taggers are and building a case against them, says Lieutenant Vince Carter, who heads the sheriff's graffiti unit, We're in this war against graffiti and we're doing everything to stop it. In years past, authorities usually didn't go out of their way to prosecute the artists, most of whom use pseudonyms to protect their identities. Now law enforcement officials in major cities are sharing information, creating catalogs of graffiti work by artists. Police can use evidence of past vandalism to obtain search warrants and stack charges to prosecute graffiti vandalism as a felony. Shepard Fairey, the LA-based graffiti artist famous for his portrait of President Obama, which hangs in the Smithsonian, was arrested in Boston in 2009 on his way to celebrate a museum exhibit of his work. Mr. Fairey was charged with 30 felonies for putting stickers and posters on stop signs and guardrails. Mr. Fairey disputed the charges. Most of the charges were dropped, but Mr. Fairey was sentenced to 2 years probation for misdemeanor vandalism and prohibited from carrying stickers in Boston. His attorney says. Popcorn, Nicole.
Police worry that graffiti exhibits encourage vandalism, but graffiti's popularity has also helped their case, as once secretive artists come out of the shadows. I think when law enforcement can identify a well-known graffiti artist, then that artist will become a target, says Ton Chin Nguyen. Mr. Williams' lawyer says Mr. Williams does not view himself as a tagger or a vandal. He views himself as an artist. Some graffiti artists sell their work at private galleries or online. Others are hired by corporations to design ad campaigns or special projects. In some cases, they are hired to paint murals. The work of the street artists known as Banksys have drawn international fame and led him to create an Oscar-nominated documentary, Popcorn Armand.
In 2008, Sotheby's sold a painting by another artist, which Banksy has defaced, for $1.8 million. Adidas and Pepsi have hired graffiti artists to create designs and marketing campaigns for the products. Mr. Williams may be the only prisoner in LA's Twin Towers Correctional Facility previously commissioned by Levi's to design the jacket. Earlier this year, he was attempting to board a flight to Ireland, where he was hired to paint a mural, when he was arrested for violating terms of his probation, stemming from a 2009 vandalism incident in Los Angeles. He had failed to report for a community service assignment picking up trash and hadn't paid $3,500 restitution to cover the cost of removing the graffiti, his lawyer and police say. Prior to his 2009 arrest, investigators had been on the trail of Revo for years. I'm happy he's been identified and captured, and now he has to pay for what he was doing, says Randy Campbell, a retired California Highway Patrol officer who now helps cities trying to fight graffiti. Law enforcement officials say they aren't making a judgment on whether graffiti is art, just responding to community demands to combat graffiti. As long it is painted on public property without permission, it's a crime. Los Angeles spends $10 million a year to scrub the stuff off walls. These vandals don't have any respect for property. Mr. Campbell says, as for talent, he says Mr. Williams' work was halfway decent. It was big puffy letters, multiple colors, and nice shadowing.
Thank you. All right, next we're going to do an activity called Think, Pair, Share. Basically, each of you are individually going to answer a question and then pair up and compare your answers, and then we'll share out loud. Pretty much the question is, do you think that graffiti is art or vandalism? Or if you feel like it's kind of both, then just write that and then any reasons why. you guys can start comparing while you kind of finish up with your thoughts. Or you can talk out loud, obviously.
Which one?
To each other.
I don't know, it's really both because
That's
it's clearly against the law.
Yeah,
That's
that's the only
art
reason to me.
because it's talented and medium was created.
Yeah.
What's art to some people is art, and others
What
art
really is art. So,
Yeah.
Yes, it is crime.
Pretty much it's just a form of expression.
Not, it is not. Sometimes you pay for permission. Outside the building, yeah, paint this way. Okay, that is fine. But they're not being arrested for that. They're being arrested when they go down to church down the lane with little Susie and little Bobby go to pray to God. And they see the big word on the side of the church. That is problem. Am I talking too loud, teacher?
No, you're fine.
Okay. But what it is very nice.
you know, art
They have
is
books
art
that
when
just
it's
have
like,
full,
graffiti
it's
is art
colorful,
when
and
it is
pictures.
It used to be a place to make an
social
express.
statement or
Easy out
or something like that, but it's really
without
like,
breaking the
gang
law.
members tagging up.
They did work
Like
on
their
all
terrorism.
because where do you set up that?
Yeah.
Like,
To them, I'm the artistic, but their main point of life is to show, yeah,
now,
to show
what else is
show
on
ownership.
the town?
Territory.
The bad area of town, so you're just making it area worse instead of helping them better, but you put it in the middle part of the town. And all my people are so upset.
Is everyone ready to share what they have come up with everybody out loud?
Okay.
You seem like you had a lot to say, so.
Oh, no, we actually agreed on that it is both art and vandalism. You know, there are instances like the movie and the report said when they are paid on commission to put these murals up, and that is fine. But they are not being arrested for putting up these commission works. It is when they are going to the sides of buildings that are not there. And painting there that the problem is. And, you know, some of it does look good, and a lot of it looks good, but some of it is vulgarity, some of it is gang signs, some of it is just nonsense that has no place anywhere. And that is the problem. You have to distinguish between, that is why it is so difficult. You have to distinguish between what is good and what is bad, what is okay to put up and what is not, and what is artistic freedom.
Anybody else? Anything different?
I guess,
Pretty much the same.
I agree with them that there is a line between, you know, art and vandalism, like, you know, when gangs, you know, mark their, you know, territory, their turf with, like, their symbols of their gangs, you know, that's stuff that's showing ownership, that's not really artwork. But, like, when activists are writing on public property, you know, that fact that they're doing it illegally, that is, like, them socially making a statement. So them doing it illegally is more important. If they would have did it legally, I don't think it would have been as big a deal. You know, they probably wouldn't have got their point across as good as they did. And it is them just expressing their opinion. And, you know, what is art? You know, like, it really is opinionated. Art is.
Yeah, it brings up other questions.
Exactly.
All right, well, starting to run out of time, so just turn in your papers, and you are free to go.
Can I keep it? Maybe extra credit.